Starting Grid, die Formel 1 Show mit Kevin Scheuren in Zusammenarbeit mit motorsporttotal.com und Formel1.de.
Keep racing
Auf meinsportpodcast.de.
Ich bin immer auf der Suche nach dem besten Sound. Für euch hier im Podcast in Sachen Aufnahme und natürlich auch, wenn ich selbst Musik oder Podcasts höre. Es gibt nichts Schlimmeres, als richtig gute Musik oder richtig guten Podcast, so wie Starting Grid, mit schlechten Kopfhörern zu hören. Und da fängt das schon an. Kopfhörer. Ich mag es ja nicht, wenn ich so Dinge auf dem Ohr sitzen habe. Es sollen schon In-Ears sein, aber In-Ears sind nicht gleich In-Ears. Und da kommt jetzt Bose ins Spiel. Mit dem Quiet Comfort Earbuds fühle ich mich angekommen. Die Dinger sitzen durch die Stay-Here-Technologie perfekt im Ohr. Kein Drücken, kein Vakuumgefühl bei 3 verschiedenen Größen der mitgelieferten Silikonaufsätze, und das ist jede Menge wert. Bose hat nicht nur ein einfaches Noise Cancelling in die Quiet Comfort Earbuds gepackt, sondern gleich 11 Stufen. Egal wo ich bin, im Zug, im Büro, im Flieger, beim Joggen oder bei dem Formel-1-Rennen, das muss ich aber noch ausprobieren, ich kann mit jeder Zeit genau dem Level an Ruhe durch die Gegend laufen, wie ich es gerade brauche. Musik und Podcast sind Leidenschaften von mir. Leidenschaften, die gut klingen sollen. Bose ist bekannt für glasklaren, dabei aber kraftvollen Sound. Die Quiet Comfort Earbuds sind mit einem Volume Optimized Active Equalizer ausgestattet, der die Höhen, Tiefen und Mitten der Inhalte immer genau richtig anpasst, egal wie laut ich es eingestellt habe. 6 Stunden Laufzeit mit einer Ladung, 10 Stunden mehr durch das Ladecase und natürlich beste Verbindung mit Bluetooth 5.1 sorgen für jede Menge Fokus, Hörvergnügen und Energie, wann immer ich sie brauche. Die Bose Quiet Comfort Earbuds, meine erste Wahl, um jetzt die neue Folge Starting Grid zu hören. Deine auch? Einen schönen guten Tag und herzlich willkommen hier zu Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de. Mein Name ist Kevin Scheuren und ich begrüße euch ganz herzlich zur zweiten Ausgabe unserer Serie Vintage, The Past of Formula One. In dieser Serie möchte ich euch jeden Monat eine Formel 1 Legende, einen ehemaligen Formel 1 Fahrer vorstellen, mit ihm sprechen über seine Zeit in der Formel 1 aus den Jahrzehnten von 1950 bis 2009. Das ist so mein Punkt, wo ich sage, okay, bis dahin möchte ich es erstmal halten. Und da hoffe ich einfach hier Monat für Monat Gäste für euch organisieren zu können, die was zu erzählen haben. Wir hatten im letzten Monat Mario Andretti zu Gast und direkt in diesem Monat geht es weiter mit dem nächsten zweifachen Formel 1 Weltmeister, Emerson Fittipaldi, eine absolute Formel-1-Legende, und ich bin unfassbar stolz, dass ich mit ihm sprechen durfte. Vielen Dank an dieser Stelle an Laureus, dass sie das möglich gemacht haben im Rahmen der Laureus World Sports Awards 2021. Übrigens ja Lewis Hamilton da mit einem Preis ausgezeichnet worden für sein Engagement für Gleichberechtigung und gegen Diskriminierung und gegen Rassismus. Ist es uns möglich gewesen, etwas über eine halbe Stunde mit Emerson Fittipaldi sprechen zu können. Das ist auch der Vorteil von Corona gewesen, denn im Normalfall, und ihr habt es ja vielleicht in den letzten Jahren, als ich in Monaco war, gehört, da gibt es immer nur so, sagen wir mal, 5 bis 10 Minuten maximal mit einem Sportler. Und ja, dadurch, dass er jetzt unterwegs war, hatten wir die Möglichkeit, über eine halbe Stunde mit ihm zu sprechen, beziehungsweise ich hatte das, und es ist ein sensationelles Gespräch geworden. Ich möchte dieses Vorgeplänkel hier gar nicht so lang halten. Für euch nur der Hinweis, dieses Interview wird auf Englisch sein. Wir hatten erst überlegt, das auch auf Deutsch zu übersetzen. Da waren wir uns noch nicht ganz sicher, wie wir das hinbekommen, wie wir das machen würden. Wir werden das für diese Ausgabe jetzt noch nicht machen, aber im Verlauf der Serie werden wir immer noch weiter englische Gäste haben. Ich weiß, dass einige von euch gerne eine Übersetzung haben möchten, werden wir das versuchen in die Wege zu leiten, aber heute bleibt es erstmal auf Englisch. Und ihr hört dann gleich nach der Pause, nach der ersten, direkt den Einstieg in das Gespräch. Und im ersten Teil geht es um seine Anfänge im Motorsport. Es geht darum, wie er aus Brasilien in die Formel 1 gekommen ist und ganz besonders die Familienbande. Also wir sprechen direkt am Anfang über seinen Sohn Emmo Junior, der ja jetzt in der Sauber Driver Academy ist und Formel 4 fährt dieses Jahr, bereits jetzt. Und ich glaube, einen richtig guten Weg in der Formel 1 vor sich hat. Und dann blicken wir zurück, wie sein Vater, seine Mutter, die beide Motorsport gemacht haben, ihn zum Motorsport gebracht haben, wie er in die Formel 1 gekommen ist, mit Colin Chapman in Kontakt gekommen ist und was es für ihn bedeutete, für ihn dann zu fahren. Und auch, und das finde ich ganz witzig, wie sein Vater da verantwortlich war, dass er nach seinem ersten WM-Titel 1972 nicht aufgehört hat. Er wollte eigentlich aufhören. Also ähnlich wie Keke Rosberg, wie Nico Rosberg, er wollte aufhören. Und sein Vater hat gesagt, nein, du wirst in ein paar Jahren wieder fahren wollen und diese ganzen Geschichten, die werdet ihr gleich hören. Ich hoffe, ihr habt Spaß dabei, ich hoffe, euch gefällt das, und ich bin aber der Meinung, dass wenn ihr die Formel 1 liebt, und das tut ihr alle, die hier diesen Podcast hört, da werdet ihr mit Emerson Fittipaldi unglaublich viel Spaß haben. So positiv, einfach eine tolle Persönlichkeit, der sich unglaublich viel Zeit genommen hat, mit sehr viel Hingabe seine Geschichten erzählt hat. Und ich möchte einfach euer Feedback auch gerne hören oder lesen. Deswegen folgt uns gerne bei Twitter und bei Instagram unter startinggrid_F1 und natürlich auch gerne bei Facebook. Sucht einfach nach MSP Grid und dann könnt ihr uns dann da liken oder in die Starting Grid F1 Fans Facebook-Gruppe kommen. Gerne auch in die Telegram-Gruppe Starting Grid Fans. Die Links sind alle in den Shownotes und da würde ich mich freuen, wenn ihr mir eure Meinung zukommen lasst. Wie gefällt euch dieses Format? Wie gefiel euch dieses Gespräch mit Emerson Fittipaldi? Ja, und das war genug der Vorrede. Jetzt gibt es eine kurze Pause und dann direkt rein ins Gespräch mit Emerson Fittipaldi, dem Formel 1 Weltmeister von 1972 und 1974. Und dann werde ich das Ganze gegen Ende der Teile mal ganz kurz zusammenfassen, was ihr da gerade gehört habt. Und dann geht es an die nächste Pause und dann kommt das nächste Gesprächsteil. 2 größere Gesprächsteile heute. Ja, und dann bleibt ihr jetzt dran, hier bei Folge 2 von Vintage, The Past of Formula One mit Emerson Fittipaldi im Rahmen von Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de.
Starting Grid, der Podcast rund um die Formel 1, wird dir präsentiert von den Quiet Comfort Earbuds von Bose. Mit Interviews,
They have everything on paper required to win the World Championship.
und Analysen
Taktik und Ferrari klappt nicht immer gut.
vor und nach jedem Grand Prix. Starting Grid, die Formel 1 Show mit Kevin Scheuren in Zusammenarbeit mit Motorsport.total.com und Formel1.de. Jetzt mit der weltweit effektivsten Geräuschunterdrückung, den Quiet Comfort Earbuds von Bose. Starting Grid auf meinsportpodcast.de. Hochwertiges Audio, das Sie so von Bose erwarten würden.
Martin hat schon bewiesen, dass er alle möglichen Turniere gewinnen kann.
Nur Golf
This is the final game of the 144th Open Championship.
auf meinsportpodcast.de.
In dem Fall wollte ich mir das nicht nehmen lassen.
Nur Golf
It says a lot about the European Tour and how far we've come over the years.
auf meinsportpodcast.de.
Hello Emerson, it's great to talk to you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's the most important question right now.
Good, good, good. You know, I've been traveling a lot in Europe. I arrived from Denmark last night because Emmo is going to race in Formula 4. My son in Denmark, they allowed 14 years old. And just about the last 2 weeks I was there testing.
Let's talk about Emmo Jr. for a second at the beginning. What are his prospects in motorsport?
Well, you know, this year he did okay in karting. He went very fast. He only did 3 races. Do you understand karting? Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay is the top category of karting. Yeah. And he was very fast. I was very pleased. And then I found out from my friends that in Denmark, you can race 14 years old, the Formula 4. It's a regional championship, but it's a very good learning. You know, the Scandinavian drivers are very good. They have very good tradition in rally and Formula 1. And we are going to do this Danish championship and karting this year. Some of the European races, the World Championship of Karting, that's going to be in Brazil, if the situation allows to be in Brazil. For the first time ever, we're going to have the World Championship in Brazil.
Great.
That'll be interesting for a lot of pressure for him to race in Brazil.
Yes, absolutely.
It'll be good. And then that's the program for Emmo this year. 2 weeks ago back to Denmark should be the first race.
Okay. What does it mean for him and for you that he's a part of the Sauber Driver Academy?
I think, you know, he's very proud, very good, very happy to be part of Sauber. And his dream to be a Formula 1 driver, I know, is very difficult. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of learning. And, you know, he's very motivated. He loves. For my 3 boys, he's the only one who like it.
But then you must be proud. You must be really proud that he wants to follow your footsteps.
I'm very, very happy, very proud. It's a tough project, as you know. Motor race is getting more and more difficult. You have to find sponsors. You have to have support. And we are working hard for him to be there. The Danish people are helping us. They welcome us to race there. I like it. Yesterday, the day before, his coach, Ian Magnussen, was giving class to Emmo. Was very good, huh? Very, very good.
So you are part of
Ian Magnussen was coaching better than the father.
Oh, really?
For sure.
Oh, great.
I told when he arrived there, Ian, I said, thank you are here, and I can teach myself.
So,
when I had the crash in Michigan, drive for Penske, Ian was my substitute.
Oh, really? Yes.
On the Penske team, yes.
I remember. So the circle is closing.
Yes. I told you, incredible coincidence.
Oh, really?
Now he's my Amos junior coach.
Oh, wow.
Ian's going to make a big announcement today. I don't know if you saw it. He'll make a big announcement today, Ian Magnussen.
He will be driving with his son, with Kevin in Le Mans?
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Yes, he was very excited. He told me Wednesday, Emerson, Friday, I'm announcing. I'm very excited. That's be a fantastic experience, he and Kevin driving together.
Yeah, in our podcast we talked about this a lot. So I didn't think that it would be happening so soon, but I'm really looking forward to it that they are doing this year. So Emerson, you are part of my vintage series, my drive back to the Formula One history. So we are seeing now the first steps of your son Emmo Jr. in motorsport. How did you get into motorsport?
My father was a motor race journalist and used to take me to Interlagos track. When I was 5 years old, I saw a race car going by and I said, well, one day I want to be a race driver. That's how it started in Brazil many, many years ago. And my father was amateur driving. He raced as well. And my mother races amateur too. My mother raced a Mercedes in 1952.
Oh, wow.
On the 24 hours, another lady in Interlagos. And she finished ahead of my father.
So it was given that you would be participating in motorsport.
Yeah, the family loved it, and by the way, my wife's family, mother of Emmo, in 1954, if I'm not going 53, first time I saw Porsche 356 was Interlagos, and was my wife's grandfather. He's the biggest Porsche fan in the world. They always Porsche Volkswagen in Brazil. Yeah. It was the first Porsche to be imported in Brazil. And this is Emmo's grandfather from my wife's side. Was a racing family too. So he has racing family on both sides.
So he will be successful. He must be successful one day.
I hope he'll be better than the father. But he has genes from my wife too. Possibly my wife is stronger than me. I don't know.
So you were in Formula One from 1970 to 1980, which sounds a really short time, 10 years. But it was also a very dangerous time in Formula One as well. So let's get back to the beginning. How did you get into contact with Colin Chapman for the 1970 season?
I arrived in England in 1969 to drive a Formula Ford that I bought with my own money in Brazil. I was already building cars. I was building my history I make a very short. But when I was 14 years old, I started designing and building by hand a Formula One steering wheel. And I was selling to sponsor in racing. I had a business, it grew very fast in Brazil. I was selling to all Brazil a leather steering wheel. And I trademarked Formula One at that time. And then I started building karts. I was racing my own kart and selling. The factory still until now. It's called Mini Kart. If you look in the Brazil history, a kart mini. And then Volkswagen launched Formula V. I built the Formula V. I was selling to clients and racing myself. And then I did the Fittipaldi Porsche. It was the fastest car in Brazil. It was in 1967. And then I decided to race out of Brazil. I bought a Formula Ford. I did well for 3-4 races. And then Jim Russell Racing Driver School in Snetterton called me to drive a Lotus Formula 3. Mm-hmm. And I accepted the invitation. And then I raced beginning of the 1969 Formula Ford. And then I raced the Formula 3 Lotus, private Lotus. And Colin Chapman was watching. I won the British Championship. And then Colin invited me at the end of the year to race Formula 1 for 1970. And I had not enough experience. I told Colin, I said, thanks for the invitation, but I only would like to start in July 1970. And I want to do some Formula 2 races before, because it was going to be too big, the gap from Formula 3 to Formula 1. And he accepted. I did a few races. I did beginning of the season. Well, my first Formula 2 race was Hockenheim in April 7 in 1970.
Good old Hockenheim.
Yeah, good old Hockenheim. And then in July, I started with the Lotus 49. There was an old car from Jim Clark time from Graham Hill. Was my first race, but that's how I started a relationship with Colin Chapman. And he was fantastic to me. He was my mentor. I drove 4 years. I learned a lot from Colin Chapman. He was an incredible guy, incredible.
My first guest on my vintage series was Mario Andretti. So this is big for me because my first two guests on this series are two former world champions, and Mario also had a great respect for Colin Chapman. What made Colin Chapman such a special person?
I think he comes from an aeronautic engineer. He was graduated as an aeronautic engineer. He brings a lot of technology from airplane to race cars. He was very advanced in ideas compared to a regular Formula 1 designer. He always had new inventions. He always trying to use the limit of the rules very close. To me, he was a genius. And at that time, we have no telemetry. And he had incredible intuition to get the car right, working. You'd ask me, how's the car in turn 1, turn 2, turn 3? And then you'd put the two fingers here, sync it. I know how to change. And, he was an incredible guy. I had a lot of respect for Colin, for his family. They really treat me well all the time. And was incredible relationship with Colin Chapman.
In 1970, you had just joined the Lotus F1 team, and then on your first Grand Prix weekend, your fourth, the team star driver Jochen Rindt died in an accident in Monza. And suddenly you were the number one Lotus driver, and you won 4 races soon after. What kind of thoughts were on your mind during these extraordinary weeks?
The Monza was the first time that a so close friend died. My teammate was a big shock to me, to the family, but was reality that time. And you have to be focused. Like when I arrived at the paddock, I was there to give my best, to perform, to enjoy the sport. And we know it was a high risk, but I could not think about the risk. I had to drive the car as fast. And at that time, Joe Bonnier and Jackie Stewart already starting the Grand Prix Driver Association to improve safety. And we always with the hope next year be safer, the year after be safer. But it was a very tough period. I mean, I made a calculation since I started Formula 1 to my last year in IndyCar. I lost 37 friends in racing. That's a lot, And thanks God now is much, much safer. Statistic now is much lower. But that time was reality, was a trauma so many times.
Have you ever been scared in a race car driving in these dangerous times?
I was scared many times when I had a mechanical failure. And then in fraction of a second from driving, you're a passenger of the car. The car would take where you want to go. And thanks God, a few things that happened. I'm still here talking to you happy. And it's a blessing from God. And I'm very Christian, very religious, and I always had a lot of faith.
I can tell you I'm happy to talk to you right now and pick your brain a little bit. In 1972, you became the then youngest Formula One world champion, 16 points ahead of legend Jackie Stewart in the Lotus. Was 1972 the perfect season for you?
Yes, it's like I called, to win the world championship, you have to have a perfect season. The team has to do a beautiful job. The car has to be consistent in any track. You have to drive well. All the circumstances are behind you, positive circumstances. And that's when you can achieve the world championship. And by the way, when I won in Monza, I was living in Switzerland. Next Monday, I went back home. I had lunch with my father, my brother. And I told my father, I'm going to retire from racing. My father said, 25 years old, I'm going to retire. I said, Dad, my dream was to be a Formula One driver. Now I won the world championship. What else I want in race? I have to stop. And then my father gave a very good advice to me. He said, the way I know you, the passion, the love you have for the sport, you can retire now, you'll be happy, but I'm sure 1 or 2 years, you want to go back. And it would be much more difficult to go back. If I would be you, I would stay. And I listened to my father's advice and I stayed. And he was right. So sometimes you don't listen to father.
At the end, you always have to listen to your parents. It's the only thing.
Yes.
So you could have.
Sometimes you don't like it. It's the reality.
So you could have done the Nico Rosberg, retire after your first world championship.
Yes.
Wow.
Like Keke did. Like
Keke, yeah, of course. In 1973, you got Ronnie Patterson as your teammate at Lotus. What kind of a teammate was Ronnie Patterson? Because I talked to Mario Andretti, of course, as well about Ronnie. So I want to take your opinion on him as well. What kind of a teammate was he? What kind of a driver was he?
Well, first, he was my best friend in Formula One because I raced Formula 3, Formula 2, and Formula 1 against Ronnie together. I used to stay in his house in England. And he stayed in my house in Switzerland with his wife. We are very close friends. Was one of the best relationship the two drivers, teammates could have. It was completely open, the setup of the car, the idea. We never had one discussion between myself and Ronnie. It was the other way. I helped him, he helped me. I had a very good beginning of the season. I was leading the championship. And then from the Belgian Grand Prix to, I don't remember, I never got any points, to Monza nearly. But was a very good relationship with Ronnie. I love Ronnie. 2 years ago, I went to see the avant-premiere in Stockholm, super sweet. I don't know if you watched the film.
I haven't seen it until now.
You have to watch.
Okay.
It's a great movie about Ronnie's life. It's called Super Sweet.
Okay.
I went to Stockholm with his daughter, Nina, and my family. Emmo was there to watch because, it's so much history. And I was very happy. I saw Ronnie's brother was there. It was good to see the family again.
Was Ronnie the biggest loss?
I think so. As my friend, yes. Close to me, yes. I mean, you feel everyone. The biggest trauma to me was Joe Siffer when he died in 1971 in Brands Hatch. Because he was upside down. I tried to help him to get out of the car. And I saw a little flame behind the helmet. He was moving the head. When I got close, the car exploded, melted my visor. And I was like, I was frustrated because I couldn't do anything. I see my friend dying in front of me. And the fire extinguisher was small. The marshals was good, but the little fire extinguisher made nothing. But that was part of racing. That was the biggest trauma to my memory, that was horrible, no? But Ronnie was close to my heart because I was always with Ronnie. It's very tough.
So, jetzt geht's mal ganz kurz auf Deutsch weiter. Das war der erste Teil des Gesprächs mit Emerson Fittipaldi hier bei Vintage, The Past of Formula One. Und ja, was habt ihr alles gehört über Emmo Junior? Ich glaube tatsächlich, der ist schon jetzt gemacht eigentlich für spätere Formel-1-Abenteuer, ja. Also wenn man Emerson so reden hört über seinen Sohn, unglaublich viel Stolz, dass er diesen Weg einschlägt, da ist Talent hinter. Habe mir letztes Mal ein paar Aufnahmen angesehen von ihm, das ist ein richtig talentierter junger Fahrer, der, wie ihr es gehört habt, von Jan Magnussen trainiert wird. Ja, Jan Magnussen, der mit seinem Sohn Kevin, ehemaliger Formel-1-Fahrer, letztes Jahr noch für Haas gefahren, bei den 24 Stunden von Le Mans teilnehmen wird. Und irgendwie ganz interessant zu sehen, dass Emerson wirklich sehr, sehr behutsam mit ihm umgeht, aber auch schon merkt, dass da was ist und dass da was heranwächst, was er ja auch fördern möchte. Und es ist total schön zu sehen. Wir hatten das Gespräch über Zoom geführt und wir hatten beide das Video an und er saß im Motorhome, war mit seinem Sohn unterwegs und das ist einfach eine Familiengeschichte und diese Familiengeschichte zieht sich einfach durch das ganze Leben von Emerson Fittipaldi, wie ihr das auch gehört habt, das zu hören, wie sein Vater und seine Mutter, die beide im Motorsport aktiv waren, ihn zum Motorsport gebracht haben, wie er aber auch selber gearbeitet hat dafür, ja, das mit den Lenkrädern, die er gebrandet hat und womit er sich ja so ein bisschen auch reingezeckt hat in diesen Sport und später dann seine ersten Erfahrungen mit Lotus, mit Colin Chapman zu hören, wie viel Respekt er für diesen Mann hat. Ja, das sind tolle Geschichten und dann, wie er 72 Weltmeister geworden ist, ja, sensationell Weltmeister geworden ist eigentlich. Also er hat wirklich im Lotus alles rausgeholt in diesem Jahr. Der jüngste Weltmeister der Geschichte bis dahin, Jackie Stewart auf Rang 2 verwiesen. Ja, und einfach, glaube ich, mit Ronnie Peterson auch einen Teamkollegen gehabt, der ihm 73 das Leben dann ziemlich schwer gemacht hat. Und im nächsten Abschnitt sprechen wir dann über das Ende bei Lotus, den Wechsel zu McLaren für das Jahr 1974, wo er dann auch Weltmeister geworden ist, 3 Punkte vor Clay Regazzoni. Aber da ist nicht alles super gelaufen bei McLaren. Und dann im weiteren Verlauf des Gesprächs sprechen wir natürlich auch über das Copersucar-Fittipaldi-Abenteuer von 76 bis 80, als er die, sagen wir mal, Familienbande, und da haben wir wieder dieses Thema, Familie ist das Hauptthema bei Emerson Fittipaldi, als die wieder durchgeschlagen sind und er dann dieses Fittipaldi-Projekt mitgefahren hat, was wirklich tatsächlich nicht erfolgreich war. Also, gleich nach einer kurzen Pause geht es direkt wieder rein ins Gespräch mit Emerson Fittipaldi hier bei Vintage, The Past of Formula One, bei Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de, und ich würde mich freuen, wenn ihr dran bleibt, denn euch erwarten noch ganz viele tolle Geschichten. Es geht auch um die Nordschleife und den Unfall von Niki Lauda 1976 und warum die Nordschleife danach keine Zukunft mehr in der Formel 1 hatte. Bleibt dran.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell
About the Beatles, der Podcast zu den Fab Four mit Malte Asmus.
Please Please Me, das Debütalbum der Beatles. Das Resultat der vielleicht produktivsten 585 Minuten der Rockgeschichte. Die Produktion kostete gerade einmal 400 Pfund und das Album wurde zu einem Millionenseller, zu einem Album, das die Musikwelt auf den Kopf stellen und für immer verändern sollte.
meinmusikpodcast.de.
This is interesting. So you told your father you want to retire at 25 after you became F1 driver, became F1 champion. He says you have to continue because otherwise in 2 years you won't be continuing. What?
No, I want to go back. He's saying 2 years you're going to back. And
yeah.
Difficult to go back again. More difficult than if you continue.
Yeah, but what about the safety concerns? His son was driving in Formula One. He saw so many people die in Formula One. Was he never scared that his son would be dying in the car like that?
My father was who bring me to racing. He knew the risk. He loves racing too, and he said, "That's your life, and you love so much. I know you cannot stop. You're going to continue." And in 1972, the Grand Prix Driver Association, that was at that time was still Joe Bonnier. I think Joe Bonnier got killed in 71 or 72, I don't remember, in Le Mans. He was driving his own team. But that time, the Grand Prix Driver Association was a strong body, fight against security to improve the tracks, rescue team to improve the medical system, to improve the driver's equipment, and to improve the cars, to make a Formula One chassis more safe. And then there was always, I did a lot of track inspection all over the world. I was flying to try to improve the track safety. Was a lot of fights to improve safety, and then there was always our hope. Motor race is getting safer, it's going to get safer. Now it's safer. Always when I see Jack, the safety of today owns a lot to Jack Stewart's effort.
Let's talk about
Joe Bonnier.
Let's talk about the 1975 Spanish Grand Prix then in Montjuic. It was the only time Formula One wanted to drive there, but you, as the reigning world champion, didn't take part in the race to protest against the catastrophic safety features at the track. Was it the only time in your career that you actually had second thoughts or doubts about a race or a racetrack? And did you have the impression that things changed after this?
No, when I arrived there, I jogged on Thursday afternoon. I jogged on the track, and I saw the barriers with wire, with no boats. And I said, how can you race with trees, posts, people, public park? And then there was a big fight with Balestra. That was my biggest fight with Balestra. And then they say, well, amanhã is going to make it. Tomorrow is going to happen the safety. Tomorrow we improve the track. It never happened. I had a Marlboro, Philip Morris had a motorhome. I called the drivers on the motorhome. I said, listen, guys, I'm not going to race here. This is beyond the risk that any race driver today has to take. This is a stupid risk, and I cannot accept. And then Balestra hear that. He come to me and say, Emerson, if you don't race, we are going to impound the McLaren transport, and you are not racing in Monaco. McLaren is not going to race in Monaco. And then I told Teddy Mayer, who's the team manager, I say, Teddy, what I'm going to do, I do minimum laps for qualify. There was a rule. You have to do like 3 or 4 laps to be able to qualify. I did Saturday afternoon. I started the Grand Prix. I went out in the start very slow, and then I pick up a plane to Geneva. When I arrived in Geneva airport during the race, the TV was, the Swiss TV was waiting at the airport. And I saw that they were going to interview because I left. And then they said, you know what happened? I said, no, I just arrived now. Well, Rob Stomney got killed and another 3 person. And I was shocked. And by the way, Balestra suspended me when I left Barcelona for 3 Grand Prix because the Brazilian FIA guy told me afterwards. And then when there was the crash, he took the suspension off. Typical Balestra,
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
This is really incredible.
And then Ayrton fight with Balestra, a lot of people.
So let's talk about the Nordschleife, the Nürburgring. 1976 was the last time they drove there. Of course, because of the accident by Niki Lauda as well. Safety-wise, how was the Nordschleife back then?
The track, to me, with the standard of safety, was okay. The biggest problem we had at that time was, as you know, it can rain one side and be dry the other side. And if you come in slicks and big rain, because it's so long, the track. But the track itself, if you look in 1976, the barriers, the protection, the track was like any other track in the world, just too long. And then the risk of raining was a big problem, my opinion, because the slick tires. And Nick's crash, I helped to get Nick out of the car. I was one of the guys that stopped. I was driving the Copersucar. His crash could be any other track in the world, same crash. It was not because of Nürburgring.
So it was just coincidence.
It's just coincidence to be Nürburgring, but we're very concerned for the future because of raining. That would be a disaster. For example, if you start on dries, and then the other side of the track is big summer rain, you know, because, you know, German, you had some summer rain come suddenly, a black cloud, rain strong, it would be a total disaster. That's always concern.
You went to McLaren in 1974 after 1 year with Ronnie in Lotus. What did they promise you at McLaren that you were inclined to go there?
Well, it's a long story, not a long story. I try to be short. Philip Morris, Marlboro invited me to choose the team. I was the one who chose McLaren. And then they say, they are BRM, they're not very happy. They made the offer for me, not just to be the driver, but to choose the team. Okay. And then I went to see Bernie. Brabham was a very good team. I went to see Ken Tyrrell, was another very good team. And I went to see McLaren. And what I like McLaren, they are very young people, most of them New Zealand. The M23 was a very good car. They never won the World Championship. They are very enthusiastic team. And then I went back to Switzerland, and Philip Morris was still in Lausanne, Switzerland, where I live. I went back there, I said, I choose McLaren, go McLaren, they accept. And was right. I mean, I have very good memories from McLaren. They're very good people, very hardworking. Ted Mayer was an American lawyer, was the owner, and he was very good in organization, logistics. Before every Grand Prix, we try to get the best suspension geometry, the best aerodynamics, the best wheelbase for the cars. McLaren is always working hard between Grand Prix to improve the car. That was fantastic 2 years there, very good years. I was very pleased, very good people, extremely motivated team. To put, you understand, motivation inside the team.
When 1972 was the perfect season and the perfect World Championship, the 1974 World Championship, where you cut out Clay Regazzoni only with 3 points at the end of the season, was this a surprise to you that you became the 1974 World Champion with McLaren?
You know, I always tell, was the only time in my life that I only sleep 4 hours before the Grand Prix, because we went to Watkins Glen to the US Grand Prix, equal points. And then on the grid, the car wasn't good. I started next to Clay. I look at the Ferrari. The Ferrari mechanics could not look at the McLaren mechanics. The McLaren mechanics could not look. And Clay was another very good friend of mine. I always, I raced many years in Formula 2 with Clay, Formula 1, everything. And then the night before, I said, can you imagine, we are equal points tomorrow. One of us is going to be world champion. Tremendous pressure, more than Indianapolis. I mean, I only slept 4 hours. Normally I sleep well before the Grand Prix. And I only slept 4 hours. It was what I call total pressure on the Grand Prix driver was that night.
And what kind of feeling was it when you went over the line and you knew you are the world champion?
I was so happy, so excited that happened. Was a very good work for McLaren team the whole year, working very hard. Beginning of the year, the M23 was very bad on bumping tracks, and they changed the geometry. They changed the suspension, was better, and was a very tough championship, different from 72. Was much more hard work to win, and Ferrari was running very strong that year, very, very strong. And then next year, I think Nicky won and I was second, 75.
Was Clay Regazzoni one of the most underrated drivers in your time in Formula One?
He was fast, but I would not say underrated, but he was always a very high-risk driver next to you.
Yeah, so don't get too close.
We knew Clay was very fast. He was always very fast, since Formula 2. But he was... always you have to be careful. With Clay it was difficult, not easy.
Who was the most underrated driver during your time in Formula One?
Underrated driver? I don't remember. There was
Or would you say there was one driver, looking back in hindsight, that you would say he could have been, should have been, would have been world champion if only he was in a better car?
Well, one guy who was extremely talented but had very good cars, nearly won the championship, was the Argentina Carlos Reutemann. He was extremely fast. Another good friend of mine. The other day I talked to him. He was like a senator in Argentina. I called him a month ago. I'm always happy to talk to him. He was extremely fast driver. He was, like you say in English, world champion material. You know, he could be a world champion for sure. But never happened to him.
In 1975, you became second, as you said, in McLaren. For 1976, you changed team to drive for your brother, Copersucar. You mentioned it. What did you see in the family project that made you take the risk of switching the teams, and did you consider it a risk at the time?
I consider the risk for sure. I love, like I told a little bit of my history before going to Europe, of building. You know, we were building from kart to a Fittipaldi Porsche prototype. It was beautiful. I don't know if you saw the picture. Did you see?
I did it, yes. I researched.
The Fittipaldi Porsche?
Yes, I saw it, of course.
In 1967, we broke the lap record in Interlagos by 7 seconds from the second fastest car. It was extremely fast. And we love to do. And then with Embraer, the airplane company in Brazil, Embraer just started. They help us on developing all the aerodynamic on the car. And it was like a dream. And then it was very tough 4 years. We worked very hard. I worked very hard. The best result was the Brazilian Grand Prix, and I finished second, 78. And the last year, because the Formula One team is who is building the car, who is behind the project. And the last year, in 98, I hired Jackie Rosberg. He was the best driver in Canada and in America in Formula B, was like a Formula 2 of America. He was winning everything. And myself and Peter Waugh was the team manager. And we were looking for a very fast driver. We say, why we don't get this Finnish guy who is young, winning everything in America, and we hire Jackie. And then Harvey Postwaite, our chief design. And the junior design was Adrian Newey. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It was the first job. It was with me.
Oh, that's great.
We had the best car in July. Already parted all the aerodynamics, being helped by Adrian.
Yeah.
Harvey Postwaite, our chief designer, had very good people. And see, now the Fittipaldi team is going to be strong. We're sponsored by Skoll. And then they had the problems in Brazil, Skoll. And in July, I received a call from Skoll. I said, we cannot continue the Formula One team.
Oh.
And I had the best people. Peter Waugh, I don't know if you remember Peter Waugh.
Mm-mm.
Peter Waugh was the team manager for Lotus since Jim Clark up to Mario Andretti. And then I hired Peter Waugh. And then I hired Jackie Rosberg and Adrian Newey.
Wow. So you Hall of Famers in your team. So what would you say that if the Copersucar-Fittipaldi project would have continued, what would you say?
We had no more sponsors that year from Brazil.
No, but if it would have continued, if you would have continued, what could you have achieved?
We had the best elements. I mean, I will not say the best, but on top 3-4 teams in the world, we are with the people behind. That's the Formula One team is who is behind you, who is working. It's not the person who owns the team, but who is the team behind you. And I had a fantastic team behind. Then when I received this call from Brazil Monday, was beginning of August, just before the German Grand Prix. And actually qualify first time with the new car. We qualify, I think Keck was 4th and I was 6th. In Hockenheim, we have no testing on the car, out of the box. And then I had to call them, say, listen, we are out next year. I had to tell 6 months before. We cannot continue. It was a shame.
Oh, such a disappointment.
Yes.
How did your colleagues in the paddock react when they heard the news?
Well, for sure, Jackie, the whole team was very disappointed. We could not with the best car ever that I had, and we had to stop. It was very disappointing to everybody.
Can you tell us a little bit about the atmosphere in Formula One when you were there those 10 years in the 70s? In the media, we always see like James Hunt celebrating, partying. It's what you see in television. Was it really this kind of a party society in reality, or is it a little bit too romanticized for the people today?
No, I think was a different ambience because the high risk of racing creates a camaraderie. I don't know if you understand camaraderie. We're friends outside of the car.
Camaraderie.
Any second one could not be there anymore. We are tremendous dicing on the race as a sport. Outside of the sport, we're very good friends. The circumstance that time was easy. Out of the cockpit, there was more jokes, more friendship. We didn't have telemetry, we didn't have all the electronics, we didn't have all the analytics that you have today that demand so much hours of after practice for the drivers, for the engineers I call the analytics of Formula One now is incredible. We didn't have that. It was a lot of fun. There was James Hunt, who was very fast. I like James a lot. He was a very good friend of mine as well. And it was fun to be with James. And there was more, a more romantic time, more exotic time. To give you an example, I had always big celebrities coming to racing, and David Niven used to come to the Monaco Grand Prix with me. He was a big star, English big movie star. Elizabeth Taylor used to come to race. Grace Kelly of Monaco. And my best friends outside the race was George Harrison.
Oh, wow.
If you look on the YouTube, when I had the big crash in Michigan, George made a song for my recovery.
Oh, that's great.
If you open now, it's called George Harrison, Emerson Fittipaldi song.
I will look it up.
And then you see it was a different life than now. It was more glamorous than now, for sure. The drivers had less PR around you. I could say anything I like it. By example, what you mentioned about Barcelona, I had all the Philip Morris countries for a big dinner there, and I decided not to race. And Saturday night, I went to this big dinner from Philip Morris. I said, listen, guys, you come from all over the world. I have a very disappointed news. You come here to support, but I'm not racing tomorrow. I'm going to give one lap because of Balestra and come in. But today, can a driver do this? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think a driver can do this today. Because there was no, we are more ourselves. We shout at each other, scream, we fight with Balestra. It was a different sport than now. Now if the driver says something the PR doesn't like, sometimes in the interview, I can see the drivers very scared to say something. They look like scared because that's the environment. It's not the driver's fault today. It's the environment created around the drivers today. They should be more free to talk what they like, because the public would love to see more personal opinion than what the sponsor, the PR, wants to say. Because the athlete has to have the freedom of speech. You understand?
Yes.
Not offending anybody, but being his own personality.
Yeah, I understand totally. If you see Drive to Survive on Netflix, where the PR man or woman is briefing the driver exactly on the question that might be posted to him, and then he knows the answer beforehand. So, one last question, Emerson, and then I'll let you go. If you could go back in time, is there something you would do differently in your F1 career right now, or would you say, I'm happy with it, I would do it all the same again?
No, I'm very happy. The only thing I didn't know was going to be so tough the 5 years of Copersucar. If I had Harvey Postlethwaite, Keke Rosberg, Adrian Newey 2 years before, would make my life easier.
Emerson, I thank you.
It's the only thing.
I thank
anyway,
you.
I love it from everybody from the teams.
The internet is going down again. So Emerson, thank you very much. All the best. Stay healthy, and I hope to see you at a racetrack soon.
Starting Grid, der Podcast rund um die Formel 1, wird dir präsentiert von den Quiet Comfort Earbuds von Bose. Mit Interviews.
They have everything on paper required to win the World Championship.
Und Analysen.
Taktik und Ferrari klappt nicht immer gut.
Vor und nach jedem Grand Prix. Starting Grid, die Formel 1 Show mit Kevin Scheuren. In Zusammenarbeit mit Motorsporttotal.com und Formel1.de. Jetzt mit der weltweit effektivsten Geräuschunterdrückung. Den Quiet Comfort Earbuds von Bose. Starting Grid auf meinsportpodcast.de. Hochwertiges Audio, das Sie so von Bose erwarten würden.
Hi, ich bin Yannick vom Podcast Die Beste aller Zweiten. Vielleicht erinnerst du dich noch an die WhatsApp-Werbekampagne, die hier vor kurzem bei uns lief. Dabei ging es um das Thema Privatsphäre und die Ende-zu-Ende-Verschlüsselung. Diese garantiert, dass deine Nachricht nur von dem gelesen werden kann, für den sie bestimmt ist. Nicht einmal WhatsApp kennt den Inhalt. Jetzt hat WhatsApp ein neues Feature integriert, das dir noch mehr Möglichkeiten bietet, um deine Privatsphäre zu schützen. Die Einmalansicht. Ab sofort hast du die Möglichkeit, Fotos und Videos zu versenden, die man nur einmal anschauen kann. Sobald man das Foto oder das Video angesehen hat und der Chat geschlossen wird, kann weder der Absender noch der Empfänger dieses erneut ansehen. WhatsApp ist die Privatsphäre seiner NutzerInnen sehr wichtig, damit du ohne Bedenken und frei heraus kommunizieren kannst. Die Einmalansicht von WhatsApp, ein weiteres cooles Feature zum Schutze deiner Privatsphäre. Probier es doch gleich mal aus.
Ein letztes Mal zurück hier bei Starting Grid, dem Formel 1 Podcast auf meinsportpodcast.de. Hier ist Kevin Scheuren nochmal für euch und dieser zweite Teil vom Interview mit Emerson Fittipaldi hat auch nochmal schön aufgezeigt, wie schnell es dann gehen kann in der Formel 1. Ne? Wenn du 1972 auf dem Lotus noch sehr deutlich Weltmeister wärst, im McLaren 74 schon sehr viel enger und du zweimal Vize danach wirst, also einmal im Lotus, einmal im McLaren und dann die Familie ruft und dich zu Copersucar holt, dieses Fittipaldi-Projekt, was ja irgendwie schon legendär ist in der Formel 1, aber auch im legendär in die Hose gegangen ist. Trotzdem zu merken, dass er da überhaupt keine Zweifel dran hatte, sondern im Gegenteil. Ihr habt es ja mitbekommen, wie viele Leute da angefangen haben zu arbeiten, die später herausragende Karrieren gemacht haben. Adrian Newey zum Beispiel, das wusste ich gar nicht, dass er da mitgearbeitet hat und wenn es dieses eine Jahr Geld noch mehr gegeben hätte, ich meine, natürlich, so im Nachhinein ist es immer einfach zu sagen, weil dann wissen wir mal alles, was passiert ist, aber ich habe das schon tatsächlich gespürt, also dass da was drin gewesen wäre für Fittipaldi und dass man da den nächsten Schritt hätte gehen können, aber es brauchte einfach die Kohle, aber das war halt kein Projekt, was auf super viel Geld gefußt hat, sondern auch sehr viel Arbeit, auf sehr viel Familie, auf sehr viel Freundschaft und das wäre heute, glaube ich, so gar nicht möglich. Ich meine, in dieser hochtechnologisierten Welt der Formel 1 ohne Geld irgendwie ein Projekt zu starten, wie viele Teams in den letzten Jahren dann auch gescheitert daran, hat mir unglaublich viel Spaß gemacht, diese Geschichten zu hören, zu erfahren, wie die Zusammenhänge waren, wer da mitgefahren ist, wer da mitgearbeitet hat und auch die Geschichten rund um die Sicherheit der Formel 1, die Emerson Fittipaldi unheimlich wichtig waren. Bedingt natürlich durch den Horrorunfall von Niki Lauda 76, aber so viele Freunde, die gestorben sind von Emerson Fittipaldi, wo er so emotional wurde im Interview, vor allem Ronnie Peterson, der ihm sehr nahe lag und einfach wie wichtig es ihm war, da für die Sicherheit der Fahrer, für die Sicherheit der Teams, aber auch die Sicherheit der Zuschauer, nicht nur Montjuic, die Spanien Grand Prix, aber dann auch die Nordschleife. Also, dass die Nordschleife gar nicht mal der Fehler war oder der Grund war, warum Niki Lauda diesen schweren Unfall hatte, die Nordschleife gar nicht mal so viel gefährlicher war als andere Strecken, nur dass das Eifelwetter einfach da schuld war. Wenn es einfach am Anfang regnet und am Ende ist es trocken oder umgekehrt und du einfach da nicht mehr die Gefahr einschätzen kannst, dass man deswegen auf die Grand Prix-Strecke umgezogen ist. Und dass dieser Unfall von Niki Lauda auf jeder Strecke hätte passieren können. Dass es einfach ein Freak-Accident war. Das hat mich unheimlich fasziniert, weil vielleicht viele einfach auch so einen Groll gegen die Nordschleife hatten, aber das habe ich bei ihm einfach gar nicht gespürt. Und ich möchte mich einfach an dieser Stelle nochmal ganz herzlich bei Laureus bedanken, dass sie dieses Interview möglich gemacht haben. Das bedeutet mir unheimlich viel, weil Emerson Fittipaldi auch der war, den ich bei den Laureus World Sports Awards vor 3 oder 4 Jahren, das erste Mal, als ich da war, wirklich einzeln sprechen durfte und in dieser Präsenz zu sein von diesem Mann, der ja mich aufgenommen hat in diesem Raum und mit mir gequatscht hat, aber eben nicht so lange konnte, weil es geht da ratzfatz weiter, aber man hat gemerkt, der würde gerne noch mehr erzählen und jetzt hatten wir nach all den Jahren die Möglichkeit, das nochmal so zu machen, dass ich euch das präsentieren konnte hier für Vintage, bedeutet mir unheimlich viel und ja, vielen Dank an Laureus, vielen Dank an Emerson Fittipaldi, dass er sich so viel Zeit genommen hat für mich, um mit mir über seine Zeit in der Formel 1 zu sprechen, die nur 10 Jahre war, 1970 bis 1980, aber so viele Geschichten zu erzählen hatte und er hat noch so lange weitergemacht. Und es ist einfach eine herausragende Motorsport-Persönlichkeit, zu hören, wie viel Spaß sie auch im Paddock hatten. Das muss eine irre Zeit gewesen sein in den 70ern. Und ich freue mich sehr darauf, euch in den nächsten Monaten noch weitere legendäre Stimmen präsentieren zu können. Ich hoffe auch bald mal auf einen deutschsprachigen Fahrer. Und ja, bin einfach gespannt auf euer Feedback. Ich hoffe, dass euch das gefallen hat. Für jeden, für den es jetzt ein bisschen schwer verständlich war, tut es mir leid. Wir werden aber daran arbeiten, in den nächsten Monaten dann auch Übersetzungen am Start zu haben, sodass wir da hoffentlich niemanden mehr ausschließen. Und ja, für alle, die es sich angehört haben bis hierhin, vielen Dank. Ich hoffe, es hat euch Spaß gemacht. Ich empfehle an dieser Stelle natürlich auch das Interview mit Dirk Adolf noch, unsere Exkursion mit dem GT-Talk, dem GT- und Langstrecken-Podcast, hier auf meinsportpodcast.de, ist gestern rausgekommen. Und unter der Woche natürlich unser Hörerstammtisch, unser zweiter Hörerstammtisch. Also wir entwickeln Starting Grid immer weiter. Nochmal der Hinweis auf unsere Social-Media-Kanäle, die ihr abonnieren könnt, wenn ihr in den Shownotes auf die Links klickt. Kommt in die Gruppen, diskutiert mit vielen, vielen tollen Leuten über die Formel 1 in den Gruppen und ja, wünsche euch bis dahin, bis wir uns das nächste Mal hören. Dann zur Vorschau auf den großen Preis von Monaco. Unter der Woche, nächste Woche noch ein schönes Wochenende. Bleibt gesund, passt aufeinander auf und tschüss.
Bully Special. 2 Stunden, 9 Partien, 18 Teams. Julius Eid macht euch heiß auf die Bundesliga. Taktik, Tipps und Tore. Das Duell der Experten im Bully Special. Die Vorschau auf den Spieltag auf meinsportpodcast.de. Starting Grid, die Formel 1 Show mit Kevin Scheuren in Zusammenarbeit mit motorsporttotal.com und formel1.de.
Keep racing
Auf meinsportpodcast.de. Sport für die Ohren. In deinem Podcatcher und auf meinsportpodcast.de. Total beglückt. In Zusammenarbeit mit Clubfans United. Der Podcast zum 1. FC Nürnberg. News, Analysen und Gegnergespräche zum Club. Mit Felix und seinen Gästen.
Nein, wir sind Clubfans. Die schönste Zeit am Spieltag ist meistens vor dem Spiel. Man freut sich aufs Spiel und dann leidet man halt 90 Minuten.
Total beglückt. Jede Woche neu auf meinsportpodcast.de.